Shabbat shalom, everybody. Chag Sameach. You sleeping? Shabbat shalom. Okay. I know, it's a long holiday. Today was the seventh day of Passover. But the seventh day happens to be my favorite day of the entire holiday. And it's because on the seventh day, we commemorate that dramatic episode of the Israelites crossing the sea that was split by a miracle from God. And then they reach the shore to watch that same sea close in on a pursuing Egyptian army. And this overwhelming, this unexpected change in fortune, it inspires the Israelites to burst into collective song. It's an episode known as Shirat Hayam. Rabbi Goodman read it beautifully this morning. Az yashir Moshe, uvenei Yisrael et hashira azot le'mor. Then sang Moses, and all the Israelites, this song, saying. The Hebrew is le'mor. Now, in Hebrew, this implies that there was someone else there, that there's another listener, someone else for whom this message was meant to be delivered. And so I'm going to ask you the same question that my friend Mark Kirschbaum asked me this week, which is that if all the Israelites are singing together, every single one of them, in collective singing of music, who are they actually singing for? Who are they actually sending a message to? I'm going to tell you what my answer is. They were singing for Jon Stewart from The Daily Show. And they were singing for everyone else that laughed at or reposted his now famous Easter versus Passover Faith-Off, which aired on Tuesday night. How many of you saw it? Okay, if you didn't see it, you have to YouTube it after Shabbat. And if you didn't see it, what it was The Daily Show's attempt to put Passover toe-to-toe with Easter. And it begins with Stewart comparing the Easter egg hunt at the White House with the Oval Office Seder. And then he admits, as a father of mixed faith children exposed to both Christianity and Judaism, I can't help but feel like we're getting our tuchuses beat out there. We've already conceded defeat, he says, in the Christmas v. Hanukkah debacle, and now we're losing Passover. The key people is the children. You get the children and you win. And then he continues with an 8-minute monologue, complaining about how badly we Jews miss the mark when it comes to pitching the importance of our religious traditions. Easter, he says, is an observation of crucifixion, resurrection. It's bloody, it's violent, and it's R-rated. And yet, and at this point, he pulls out a basket of painted eggs, candies, and chocolate bunnies. Passover, he says, on the other hand, commemorates freedom from slavery. It's the most retold, the most celebrated story of all time, and then he pulls out the Seder plate. Chocolate bunnies versus horseradish. Cadbury eggs versus real eggs dipped in salt water. And he says, we could have gone with the freedom theme, people. We could have gone with the freedom theme, but instead we focus on slavery. If we hope to stand a chance, we've got to step it up, Jews. That's how he finishes. Now, the bit's hysterical, but it's depressing. And it's not depressing because Jews are losing some cosmic competition with Christians over the souls of our children. It's not about Christianity, and it's not about competition. But Stewart accurately points out how badly we misrepresent our greatest holidays, our greatest traditions. We make them irrelevant, expendable to our own children, our own Jewish children. Now, he uses humor as a platform to ask a very simple question. How compelling is it really to speed read through a Haggadah just so that we can eat faster? Worse, how compelling is it really to read every single word of the Haggadah in a language and a vernacular that is incomprehensible to our kids? Now, Stewart's most significant complaint is that our symbols focus on slavery, the gloomy, the scary, the sad part of our history. and that no child's going to gravitate to salt water or bitter herbs. Christians, they turned crucifixion into a bunny that hands out chocolate candy. We took freedom and made it constipating. But our rabbis have understood Stewart's complaint for 2,000 years. And so I will address him. Mr. Stewart, Passover is not about slavery. It's not about shackles and chains and bricks, mortar, pyramid building. Passover is about movement, exactly as the name suggests. It's about passing over from one state of being to another. And that movement, it's not reserved for some people that lived 3,000 years ago. It's reenacted by each and every one of us. We are commanded to experience a liberation not from the English word Egypt. We're commanded to experience liberation from the Hebrew word Mitzrayim. Mitzarim. It means inhibition. It means limitation. Now, from the Warsaw Ghetto, some of you are going to be there in a week. Raise your hands if you're going to be there in a week. Where are you? Okay. You remember this. In a week, you're going to be standing in the same exact place where the great rabbi, the Eish Kodesh, he wrote that this movement, this passing over, it's about recognizing our own mitzarim, our own inhibitions, our own limitations, breaking free of them, exceeding our own assumed abilities, our own assumed expectations. Now, we've all heard stories. People in emergency situations, they suddenly summon this unforeseen strength. Stories of people, they surpass almost any assumed physical limitation because the situation demanded it, right? The soldier, he carries his wounded comrade 20 miles to safety. We've all heard stories like this. Passover, my friends, is breaking free of mitzarim, spiritual, internal limitations. It's about that divine spark that exists inside of each of us that enables us to behave in extraordinary ways, to defy spiritual expectations. So, Mr. Jon Stewart, the Haggadah is something we read once a year, but it is something that Jews embody every single day. Now, my wife's uncle, Mark, he's here tonight, he's sitting right over there. And he came to this country from Ukraine in 1980. And the other day we were sitting and we were talking about Passover, talking about being Jewish. Well, a Jew is this, a Jew is that. We're arguing, we're talking, we're doing what Jews do. And finally he shook his head and he said, being Jewish is just being Jewish. Being Jewish isn't here, he said. Right? It's like Passover. It's not just in a book. Being Jewish is here. Our job isn't to conduct a Seder. Our job is to be a Seder. And then he told me this story. His grandmother was very religious. But in the former Soviet Union, not only was it forbidden to practice Judaism, but the state, they devised mechanisms to ensure that Jews didn't observe, that they didn't practice Judaism. All Jews were obligated to work on Jewish holidays. Imagine, obligated to work on Jewish holidays. So much so that it was not even permissible for a Jew to call in sick. It was against the law. You couldn't call in sick on Jewish holidays. All Jewish children were obligated to be in school. And so Mark was 5 years old, and across the street from his school was an underground synagogue. It was Yom Kippur, and he watched out the window as his grandmother snuck into that building across the street. And he said to me, this day I don't know what came over me. I was afraid, I'm alone, I'm stuck behind my desk at school, but I knew it was not right. I didn't know what Yom Kippur was, I didn't know what the prayers were, I didn't understand them, but I knew that I was supposed to be inside that building. And so at 5 years old, this little boy opens the window of his school, waits for his teacher to turn her back, climbs out the window, jumps down to the ground, runs past the school guards across the street, sneaks into the synagogue where he stood watching his grandmother recite words that he didn't even understand. But he'd feel them for the rest of his life. I began this talk by asking the question, who were the Israelites singing to after they crossed the sea? Well, they were singing to each and every one of us. They were singing to Jon Stewart. They were singing to remind every subsequent generation that Passover is not about slavery. It's not about guilting young Jews into identifying with Judaism because of tragedy, anti-Semitism, Holocaust. It's not some annual reminder that bad things happen to Jews. It's about movement. It's about the ability to summon that untapped strength, unlimited potential to move from bad to good. Slavery to salvation. It's about that divine spark, that Pintel Yid, the Jewish spark. Inside each and every one of us, it enables us to behave in extraordinary ways. Now, the English language uses adjectives like resilience, courage, resolve, determination. We just call it being Jewish. Now, maybe the Seder plate is less appealing to an impressionable kid than painted eggs. But to Jon Stewart, who I love, I will say that I'll take the magic of the human spirit over the magic of a bunny any day of the week. And so my plea for all of us is that we tell the story the right way so that our children find it as inspiring and as compelling as the 100 generations that have preceded them. Shabbat Shalom. Have a wonderful end of Pesach.